What's up, everybody? January 14th, Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association presents Reasonable Doubt. Here with the one, the only, the legend himself, Troy McKinney. How are you, Troy McKinney?
I'm doing well. Long day.
Long day. The man, the myth, the legend is here with us to talk about jury trials, the latest rulings, impeachment, capital, jury trials, everything cool regarding Harris County, along with fellow board member and host of the show, Justin Harris. Hey, how are you?
Good. I'm just a fill-in interim host, and I feel at home in the garage if Troy's here.
Well,
Troy's there too.
What, do you think your hands have just been soaking in ivory?
No.
No. Actually, yes. No. And with the one, the only, then Mrs. Not Guilty, Kate Farrell. How are you?
Good. I'm just here as a token female. It's fine.
No, well, I think you're here as part of the brains, the part of the...
Yeah, that's keep us honest and legit.
Then you brought on Troy, and he's really the brains, let's be honest.
Well, it's Troy McKinney. The man has more law on him than the books.
Than the code does.
Yeah, I mean, come on. He's also lived through a lot more presidents than I have. It's happy birthday, Troy McKinney.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Troy.
Hey.
I was going to say, JV, I think I've lived through more presidents than you have, and I don't... It's not saying much, man.
Well,
have you hit 30 yet?
You look a lot more than I do.
Since 2021 technically started the new decade.
That's true.
I have now lived in the last 8 decades.
What?
You're not that old.
What? No way, Troy. What are you talking?
50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s.
That's incredible.
Oh.
Wow.
I didn't understand how math worked. I didn't get that. That's crazy. I was like,
That's
you're
Troy
not
doing
80.
math.
That's why we have you here.
There's a A&E documentary or a Dateline special with the cheerleader. So there's a case where a mama of a cheerleader, the allegation is that she puts a hitman out to murder, I guess, in order to help her daughter be part of the cheerleading team.
Allegedly.
Right. That's why I said allegedly. And so one of the awesome things, the twist is on the end. I guess one of the jurors was ineligible to serve.
Yes, he was on felony deferred adjudication.
Oh, and he got it. Yeah, it was awesome.
Now the funny part, funny you mentioned that because I had not thought about this, but sometime in the next few weeks, I don't remember the exact date, will be 30 years since she was arrested.
That's incredible.
And later this year will be 30 years since we tried it.
So, if any of y'all have seen Troy's hair, have you seen it? It's incredible. It goes down to here and kind of does like a little curl up.
It's shorter than it was back in August when I had the first haircut in 4 months.
I just realized though how much JV's hair and Troy's hair. JV, I see where you get your inspiration from.
Look, you can
The swoop.
So long as you mention my name and Troy McKinney's name, I'm cool.
You don't care if it's hairstyles.
I only wish I had his hair.
We all do.
Come on.
We all do.
Y'all obviously haven't seen him on the Dateline. What is it? It's a 48-hour special or something. It's awesome.
You missed the point. I didn't hear that Troy was on that.
There was an A&E special that they made probably in '92 originally, and then did an update on it 5, 6, 7 years later. And then there's an HBO movie and an ABC movie.
Did you ever think that it would move, that you'd now be confined to a computer and a screen? And do you feel it's affected the way the practice of law is done by you?
Well, in 1991, when that started, we had just gotten, a few months prior to that, our very first computer network in the office. First time we had PCs. Prior to that, they were dedicated, big old clunky, big old CRT tube dedicated word processing machines that did nothing but word processing.
uh, and back then I assume everything. So I came, I guess, on the back end of it. They said that often getting offense reports and videos, all that stuff was just like fictional. Like it was a closed file DA office. How in the world did you
were
manage?
videos? Well, we didn't have videos back in those days.
Fair enough. VHS.
They didn't have
Well,
body
you
cams.
didn't.
Oh no.
You didn't get the offense report until like you were in trial, right? They would hand you a copy.
Well, we generally, the Harris County DA's office, we generally got to see the offense report.
Okay.
We
You could
had
like take hand notes.
handwritten notes, could not copy it, could not, some wouldn't let you take it down verbatim. In 92, I tried a death penalty capital case that had 10 extraneous offenses, and the file was thousands of pages, and we had to hand take notes out of multi-thousand
Wow.
pages.
This makes sense. Understand, knowing when someone knows that you had a hand in forming the Michael Morton Act, your experiences on that must have certainly informed when you got to help write that legislation.
It was an experience. I'm glad I was involved in it. We were fortunate to get some things in it that really make it more functional and useful today, and protect what it was intended to serve.
Can you tell me what as soon as practicable means?
It's funny. There was one of the early drafts had a 30-day deadline, and then one said immediately. And the 30-day deadline was based off some civil rules, which one of the Senate sponsors wanted, since that's typically their deadlines. And ultimately, as soon as practicable means the time it takes for you to get it, copy it, produce it. It's a reasonableness standard. It doesn't mean wait until the week before trial to dump stuff on you that you've been sitting on for weeks or months.
Well, they don't understand that.
Did the district attorney's office, like they do now, back then? So I'll get a DWI and I'll have, for example, 15 expert witnesses dropped, or we'll have some felony cases where they'll drop every expert in the, that's on the roster of the Houston Forensic Science Institute, or did they?
All discovery required a motion of the trial court. We only got whatever the trial court would order in the way of discovery. We never got things in detail from the labs like we do today. The blood discovery order that we put together in 2012 was crafted out of some based off my motions from years before, because I had to figure out how to do these because there wasn't any training for it back then. Heck, back in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of DWI cases that had no videos. Scene videos were extremely rare. If there were videos, they were station videos only, and there were some real games played in the HPD back then. Would take the defendant who was arrested, put him in the video room, and leave him alone for 5 to 15 minutes just to see what they would do. And there were some amazing. There was one video where a young woman who had not been allowed to go to the bathroom decided to drop trowel and drop a load in the corner.
Well,
that still happens.
Seems normal to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the cops weren't happy about that because they had to clean it up.
Yeah. Hey, so were you back in the days when they used to everybody used to just smoke cigarettes in the courtroom?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I tried a couple cases. We never smoked. Back then I smoked cigarettes. Back then I never smoked during a trial, but every time the jury was sent out, cigarettes were lit up. There were lots of judges who still smoked back in their chambers, and cigarettes and cigarette smoke were everywhere.
Was that in the what we call the appellate court now?
No, that was the civil. What's now the juvenile courthouse was the criminal courthouse then, and there was an annex building to the southeast of it called the firehouse. That they used to walk prisoners from the jail across the street in big long chains with handcuffs to take them from one building to the other. It's amazing that nobody ever staged a jailbreak from one of those convoys of prisoners being walked across.
on the street level.
On
Now
the
they go
street.
everything's underground now through tunnels.
Yep.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, there were no tunnels to that building, and still aren't today, I don't believe.
I mean, and I assume that you had nobody storming the courthouse like we have people storming the Capitol.
No, although the closest it came when I tried Holloway in '91, there were hundreds of media from there from throughout the country, and they were storming the hallways.
Tell us what Holloway was about.
Oh, that was the Pom Pom Mom, the one you talked about originally.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But no, it never got violent. The problem was we were walking down the hallway, and she only came up to about here on me. So,
We all do, Troy.
So as we're walking down the hallway, they're focused on her image, and so there were lots of shots of my thighs without much else.
That's it.
But
That's great.
Let's talk about the storming the Capitol and impeachment and all that good stuff.
Let's talk about it. So you've lived through more presidents than us. You ever think you'd see something like that?
No.
A reality TV star as president?
Not in my wildest imagination would I have ever dreamed that an incident like that would have been incited, prompted, encouraged by any elected official, much less the president of the United States and his allies.
But was it though?
Yeah. Have you read the article?
Let's talk about why you think that Trump did incite this. That he, like, what in your opinion did he do that incited this?
He did it two ways. First, the most obvious way is his own words. As has been said many times since that time, words have consequences. Mm-hmm. It's not the first time that he has used his words to incite violence. He did it during the campaign repeatedly. One time where he said, "Just smack the guy," or something to that effect. He, in fact, at one point, he said that if somebody would fight him or hit him or take him out, that he'd pay their attorney fees.
Right.
The incident at the Capitol was just as bad, where he made it sound real clear that they needed to march down to the Capitol, they needed to fight, and without fighting, they were never going to take their government back.
Right.
What his words individually weren't the whole picture. There was his son Eric, there was Eric's wife, there was Giuliani, there was either a senator or a congressman, it may have been Holly, who were talking before and after, or maybe after him, but certainly before him, where they were encouraging Giuliani's words, let's have combat.
Trial by combat, yeah.
Yeah.
Trial by combat. It stoked this crowd into a frenzy. It sent them down the path of believing they had to go down there and physically take it back.
Yeah. Well, and he knows the power of his words because he convinced all of them not to wear masks when, every health official saying put on a mask. He knows the power of his words not to do it, and he had entire crowds not doing it. So he knows the power of his words. I mean, he's a reality star who became president. He knew what he was doing. His
whole shtick is based on the power of his words. That's why Twitter was such an effective communication tool for him, because he knows that his supporters, his groupies, hang on every word he says and will do what he says.
Now, what do you think of Twitter shutting him down? Now, I know it's not a First Amendment issue because it's not the government, but what do you think it's a problem that you have large media platforms shutting people completely down?
I do not. Everybody who signs up for those agrees to the terms of service. One of those is you don't incite violence, you don't promote violence, and frankly, it should apply equally to the people on the right, Trump and his allies and cronies and supporters, as it should to the people on the far left who also advocate for violence. Those people need to be shut down as well.
What do you think about entire platforms and websites and message boards being taken down by like Amazon World Service or Web Service, whatever they're called?
Parler in there?
Parler.
Yeah. Right to decide who they do business with. If you don't like the way they do business, go to someplace else. That's what competition's about. That's what capitalism's about.
Do you think that those companies become so large that they sort of start to take the place of a utility?
No. there are alternative ways to go out and communicate. Group texts, group emails. There's all kinds of ways. There's lots of services out there where you can go into group rooms and have all the conversations you want that aren't monitored most of the time. But even those are subject to terms of service. There are limits, there are controls, there are things you can and can't do. And
do you think? Sorry.
the ironic part about this is that months earlier, Trump and his allies and many Republicans were complaining that Twitter and Facebook and other platforms like that were not doing enough to control what was being put on their message boards. And now all of a sudden it kicks them. They don't like the idea, even though they liked it months ago. So, cry the river.
I'm with you. I have no problem with any of that stuff that's been done for the reasons that you said. Do you think that there ever could become a time when that would cross a line legally?
I think that's what he did, right?
No. I'm sorry.
What could cross the line legally?
When Twitter kicking somebody like Donald Trump off or anyone off based on the ideals that they state.
It scares me. It scares. I mean, to a certain degree, at least of me, it scares me. No.
What scares you? What Trump's saying or Twitter?
No, I mean the idea that we've devoted so much of our lives to these private platforms that they could censor us at any time, and I think that if they had taken steps earlier on, that they very well may have prevented Donald Trump from becoming the demagogue that he is.
Look at it this way. If I started promoting violence right now, you would have every right to dump me from this Zoom. The station would have every right to dump me off the air.
I'm not disagreeing with removing Trump. My concern is where does this stop? Does this become a slippery slope? What does violence mean? Nobody's going to interpret it except for Twitter, right? And so if they start removing just one, my concern is if you just start removing the political side that you don't like or the opinions you don't like, and you say that it's inciting violence according to your definition, there's a lot of people that are going to realize that they're getting a one-sided view of things. And so that's where my only concern comes in, is when we just start shutting, when it's not applied to everyone equally, depending upon your views, right? That's my issue.
Well, my issue is that it's going to
applied equally, is restricted and prohibited from the government. It's not prohibited from private business.
Sure. I understand that, but I completely understand, but these
I agree with
media companies.
I agree with you in principle that it is always a good thing for people to hear the opinions of people they don't agree with. Even if you vehemently disagree with it, it's still nice to know where people stand, for better or worse. It got to the point, when it escalates to the point where the President of the United States can use the platform to undermine democracy, I think they have every right in the world to say enough is enough, just like some of the senators did, and say, we'll allow our platform to be used to overtly interfere with and jeopardize the United States government and democracy.
Well, then does he get charged with what crimes? Does he get charged with any crime as a conspirator, or as an inciter, or as a party? Or
he has been. That's what an impeachment is. It's an indictment by the House of Representatives.
I'm talking criminally, though.
Well,
he can't as president.
I think clearly he could. Certainly, while he's president, the prevailing view is he could not be indicted while he is president. But after he leaves office, he very, very easily could be. I mean, the federal government, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office makes conspiracy cases all the time in all kinds of situations. When it comes to drugs, money laundering, financial crimes, frauds, they make conspiracies where people join that conspiracy, and they don't have to know what the full goals are. They just have to know that somebody's doing something wrong. And they make conspiracies like that and put people in prison for long periods of time for that.
Right.
This was combination and a conspiracy that endeavored to attack democracy and incite insurrection and sedition, which, by the way, are crimes.
Right. Well,
I
it's
mean,
ironic that those last high crimes aside, it's ironic that it took the storming of the Capitol by white supremacists and
I don't think they were all white supremacists.
yeah, that's a big statement.
I'll stand by it. And the death of 5 people to have Twitter pull the plug on him when we've got hundreds of thousands of people dead from him balking at medical experts over the last 10 months and using Twitter to do that over and over.
One of the things that prosecutors look at and that we have to deal with as defense lawyers is that it's not just your actions that you take before something happens, it's actions you take while things are happening.
Sure.
There's no intent and knowledge and plan and goal. And his actions during this, when he was asked to provide National Guard troops to help provide security and calm the situation, he sat on it and chose not to. Even though there's tapes showing him watching parts of it, him and his family watching parts of it and laughing at it.
Right.
You know, when you're running in there with a noose and screaming, "Hang Pence," and he refuses to send the National Guard in to protect the Vice President of the United States, the Senate, and the Congress, his lack of action when he had a duty to act is equally criminal.
Sean Darvish, an HPD officer that was there as well.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Brady notices.
People that we would not have expected to be part of that in a perfect world who were.
That's my scary thing.
Will that affect cases? And so what? So what? He was stormed. So what? He stormed the Capitol. Will that? Number one, is it relevant? And two, if it is, how will it affect our cases in Harris County?
Well, I think that officer apparently resigned today. 18-year officer resigned.
Well, that might work.
I suspect, although the media reports and his lawyer's statements indicate he's apparently cooperating with the FBI and has not yet been charged with anything. And frankly, I don't know that we have enough detail to know what his role was. Was he one of the people wandering around outside who weren't doing much of anything other than standing around, albeit trespassing on the Capitol grounds at that point? Or was he one of the people inside where everybody was clearly prohibited? Did he stand by and watch other people's crimes? You know, as a police officer, he's on duty 24/7. And frankly, if he was inside, and I don't know if he was, but if he was, and he stood by and watched that and did nothing to quell it or stop it or prevent it, then frankly, he may have resigned because he knew that the writing was on the wall.
Right.
But we don't know. I don't know enough based on what I've heard to know what the scope of his involvement was.
If called,
was anybody else surprised that
if called to task, would you all defend an insurrectionist?
Say that again.
If called to task, would either of you all represent insurrectionist?
You know, I don't think I've ever turned down a case. This may be the line in the sand for me. It depends on the situation.
I agree.
And how big a check they write.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree. I agree.
I will tell you this. I've never been a prosecutor. I have turned down opportunities to be a special prosecutor because I chose to be a defense lawyer, and I don't think I should be doing both. Prosecuting Trump and his ilk is something I would do.
You're not a left-wing radical, Troy. I know you. So
no,
I think that says quite a bit.
I've been a Republican all my life. I don't recognize the current Republican Party, and certainly didn't vote for the moron in chief. But in fact, it took Trump for me to ever vote for a Democrat for president. I never had before in my life.
Wow. It's been at least 6 decades for that.
So Sean Darvish says people would pay money to see that. That would be, I assume, you prosecuting to Trump and his group. Another question on the Facebook says, to what extent should other public figures be held criminally responsible? for example, obviously the big one in Texas is Ted Cruz. They're calling for him to stand down because of his, what some would argue, what some would say, his support or encouragement uh, of this insurrection into the Capitol, penetration of the Capitol is what our surveillance.
I have not heard anything that Cruz said off the floor of the Senate or off the floor of the House that incited the insurrection or encouraged it. The speech and debate clause of the Constitution gives him and every other member of Congress absolute immunity for anything and everything they say on the floor of the Senate or the House. So I don't think that any of them could be prosecuted for anything they said in an effort to lodge an objection that might have kept Biden from being rightfully declared the president of the United States or the president-elect.
Have we heard anything about McConnell having the trial in the Senate before he leaves office, or is the whole point of it just to never allow him to run for public office again? And make
the Senate's in recess right now and won't be coming back in until either the 19th or the 20th. McConnell has already said the soonest the trial on impeachment could start would be the afternoon of the inauguration. I don't really foresee that happening. I think that if Trump is convicted of the impeachment, it will be because there is a desire to prevent him from ever holding a federal public office ever again.
Right.
Frankly, if I'm if I'm a Republican senator right now, or Republican congressman, who I guess are out of the picture now because that vote's already been taken, frankly, I think this is an opportunity for what I call real Republicans to take their party back.
Right.
Trump has bastardized the Republican Party to no end. He has empowered a very low-life section of our society.
But it's like 70 million people, though.
That's the scary thing, right?
Well, hold on, though. But what I want to say on this, it's 75 million people. That voted Republican, not necessarily for Trump. And we can argue all day, and I'm not going to get into that. But I think just generalizing all of those people as supporting Trump is not correct. They were still supporting the principles that they do see as the Republican Party. And unfortunately, Trump was the candidate at the top of the party. That doesn't mean that they were all Trump supporters.
Is there a group of those individuals that are now susceptible or open to leaving the Republican Party and obviously not join Democrats, but maybe join Green Party?
Well,
not the Green Party.
Green Party?
During this election, there was a faction of the Republican Party that functionally split off the Lincoln Republicans,
right,
who actively supported Biden because Trump was at the top of the ticket.
Yeah,
I think some of that may have been an explanation for why Trump did not do as well as down ballot Republicans did. Why the Republicans were able to take either one or two state houses or governorships they didn't have before. Why they won seats in the House, which would not ordinarily happen. In a year when a Democrat won the presidency, you'd expect Democrats to pick up seats in the House, and in fact, they lost seats in the House. And frankly, Trump cost Republicans the Senate.
Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
Two Democrats in Georgia were elected because Donald Trump, because of what he was doing and saying.
All they had to do was say nothing and do nothing, and there would still be Republican control over that state. It
encouraged Democrats to turn out, and it discouraged some Republicans from turning out. So that's part of the reason I say I think there will be some Republicans, whether there's 17 to convict him of the impeachment, who knows? But I think there will be some Republicans who see this as an opportunity to take their party back and make it about policies again, instead of about the image and ego of Donald Trump.
Make it about the future of their own party, right? I mean, Donald Trump's not going to be around forever, and they need to cut the head off this monster while they can.
Well, if they're
not smart, if they're
ideas.
smart, they'll do it now because they're, Biden running in 4 years again isn't going to happen. He's going to be too old. That's not happening. And so
Right.
you have a shot. It's hard, typically the incumbent wins, but in 4 years, that's not going to be what happens. And so,
right, had Trump decided not to run for re-election this time, I think it's very possible that Ted Cruz would have been the presidential nominee.
Oh my God.
You think it would have been Ted Cruz?
I think that's probably the most likely. He was the only one left standing in 2016. He was the last one to drop, and he is ultra conservative. Nobody should ever underestimate his intelligence. He is a smart man. He knew exactly what he was doing and why it was wrong on the floor of the Senate. And he was doing it for political reasons. But
what do you think about Mike Pence in 4 years?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that Pence is going to want more of this.
No, who would want more?
He wouldn't be the first vice president, a la Biden, to run for president and get elected.
So there was a story on NPR today that talked about all these senators that were standing up or quote unquote joining the insurrection, or the Republican. Some of these senators saying, "Hey, look, we have to vote no, and we're going to not necessarily support this insurrection as the way it happened, but we're not going to accept the results." And that politically, that in those and in those areas, that it actually shows that they're a champion and that they were part of this ideal of standing up for free and fair elections. And it was an incredible spin. Say again?
Based on lies and falsehoods. I mean, the vote in the Senate, as I recall, the vote in the Senate was 93-7 to reject the objections.
Right.
Had originally been either 12 or 13 Republican senators who were joining the objections, and after the invasion of the Senate and the House of the Capitol building, 5 of them chose the enough's enough. We need to let this go. And get on with doing what was legally and lawfully and constitutionally required by counting the votes and nothing more.
Did any of y'all watch the House when they were making their arguments and voted and such? It was an incredible, they streamed it, I guess C-SPAN, whatever it is now, but it was.
Are you talking about on Wednesday when it happened? Or are you talking about the vote for the impeachment?
Yeah, no, well, when they made the arguments and then they had the vote for the impeachment, it was just.
Yeah, I was watching it out here in the garage doing Zoom docket, and then everyone started pushing in, and all of a sudden the feed from inside cut out because they were evacuating people off the House floor and out of the Senate chambers during the joint session. It was wild.
I watched bits and pieces of the impeachment debate, just little clips. I mean, it was a foregone conclusion he was going to get impeached.
It ended up coming like the 220 votes, 224 votes. I think he needed 208 or 218 or something like that.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, I think there were 10 Republicans who joined the Democrats, voting for impeachment.
Yeah.
Incredible. So
Kate actually said this to me last week, or maybe she said it on the show last week, but I'm still shocked at how relatively easy it was for the Capitol building to be overrun like that. I don't know if there was something going on that made that easier. They're looking into that, but
have you seen
sure
that?
Didn't bode well for our foes around the world to see that and sit there with like notepads out and be like, okay,
it's like
this is how we do it.
Kim Jong-un, the ruler of North
right.
Korea, sitting there like, I've been planning this for years, and then these guys with buffalo hats storm the Capitol and break into it.
Actually, I think he's sitting back saying, "Look, I'm not the craziest SOB anymore."
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And on NPR,
he's like, not the most hated anymore.
On NPR too, I heard that Donald Trump and his family and such and his staff were watching this happen, and he just kept commenting on how trashy the people looked breaking into the Capitol. It was, and that was his thing. Not that it's incredible, not that it's terrible, not this is as a flaunt to democracy, but these people who were breaking in look so trashy.
Well,
Who was that, Trump?
It wasn't
Yeah.
about him. It wasn't
Right.
about him at that point. It was.
He doesn't care about his followers or supporters, and that's what's the most mind-numbing thing about the whole is how much he's got everybody fooled.
Well, there's
And
75 million people though. Maybe he's onto something, man.
well, that's what's scary is that there's 75 million out of 375 million that are that gullible and believe that somebody like that
Hey, well, look,
gives a shit about them.
80 million people voted for.
Okay, well, Justin, let's just be clear. I would say most of the Americans actually believe that any of these politicians care about them. If you think Biden actually cares about you, no.
Uncle Biden?
I don't think any of them care
more
about
than
me.
Trump does. Maybe
Uncle
not
Joe?
you, but they haven't had a
Okay.
chance to meet you, Kate.
Okay. No, but like actually
all they would have to do is hear her voice, and they'd be convinced.
Exactly right.
I've seen jurors on it.
Even with that microphone.
I give you the middle finger for that one.
So, Troy, I want to know you since we were talking about
discussion about that before we got on, which is why it's funny. Have a private
right. So since we're talking about your opinion on these things, what do you think Trump's going to do as far as pardoning himself? There was some theories that he would step down like 6 hours before the inauguration of Joe Biden, let Pence take over, let Pence sign some pardons for Trump and his family. But now that he's apparently told Pence that he doesn't want to be friends, I don't even know if Mike Pence would do that for him. What do you think about?
Here's my sense. I don't think Trump's going to resign because he doesn't have it in him to say I quit. I think the prevailing view right now, although it's an open question whether a president can preemptively pardon himself. I think the prevailing view is that he can't, but that would ultimately be decided by the federal courts and the Supreme Court, I suspect, ultimately. But if it's true that a president can pardon himself, then a president truly is above the law and can do anything they want. Or in Trump's case, the proverbial shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
Right.
And as president and never be subject to the laws of the country for it.
Did you hear on I guess it was.
So you think he leaves office and just doesn't even attempt it?
Doesn't even attempt what?
Pardoning himself?
No, I don't think he will.
Trump was never going.
I think pardoning himself would cause him more problems, both criminally and civilly. If they're going to prosecute him, I don't think that would stand in the way. I think they would do it perhaps because of that. It might even constitute an admission of guilt on his part by accepting his own pardon.
Right.
It would cause him problems in civil litigation. Now, I think it's very likely that he pardons a number of people in his family. I think he probably pardons Rudy Giuliani. I think in the last day or two, we're going to see a big dump of pardons for close political associates and allies, business associates, his family members. Because even if he can't protect himself, I think he probably will do whatever's necessary to protect his kids and their spouses and the like.
He's going to wait to see if Ivanka shows up to Biden's inauguration.
20,000 a day. You represent Trump? You go in there and dance? Or whatever Giuliani was getting paid?
No, I think my integrity is worth more than that.
Oh, okay, 25,000. I'll do it. 25,000.
Yeah, I was like, I'm in.
And the other kicker is, I don't believe he'd actually pay.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. You're not going to get paid on that.
Well,
Giuliani billed that. I don't think Giuliani got paid that.
Hey, I would like it. I would like to, for you, Your Honor, to review this under the normal scrutiny. Can you believe it? That's incredible. Normal scrutiny. Give me a break.
No, I'm not sure that somebody could have written a fiction novel as silly and as stupid as what some of those lawsuits claimed, as to what some of his lawyers actually said in court. It got to the point where nothing was unbelievable because so much was unbelievable.
I've seen a better performance out of the high school mock trial teams, and I'm not even kidding.
It was head scratching. Like, it was really bizarre.
Well, and in many of them, those lawsuits got rejected because the judges held they did not even plead in their allegations.
Right.
They couldn't even make allegations that would afforded any right to relief, much less ever get approved.
Right.
And the line that Trump was spewing bore no resemblance to anything that was in the lawsuit.
Yeah, it's bizarre. You got to remind yourself that those were actual lawyers who were doing this, and not mock lawyers or just some of these people who are on TV in the mob.
Venezuelan conspiracy.
Right.
Speaking of jury trials, I hear that the district courts, at least, are gathering a bunch of I don't want to call other former judges that are known for moving cases and making rulings and trying cases for all of us down at the CJC to go to for rulings, for trials, for
not trials.
No trials. Okay, so the idea is that there's gonna have the names that I heard were Judge Velasquez, Judge Yates, Judge Wilkinson. Those are the names that I heard that the district court judges are going to employ to hear cases and ancillary issues in district courts. What says you, and what have y'all heard?
I've heard just very little about it today. Lots of counties operate with associate judges who will take pleas, for example, who will handle some routine order signing things, who, motions and orders like discovery orders that need to be signed. Oops. Hang on a second. My computer's about to die. I got to plug it in.
Plug it in.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Sorry, Kate.
Yeah, so what they're going to do is they're enlisting some of these former judges, like you said, and to take kind of not cases that are super old that are about to go to trial, because they're not going to the associate judges will not be handling any trial cases, but like a motion to suppress, speeding up discovery issues, trying to resolve some of these cases that have just been kind of middle, not brand new, not super old, kind of middle cases, and see if we can't get them resolved. The idea.
What I haven't seen yet, and this may be the one difference, true associate judges in counties that have associate judges, Fort Bend County, for example, has associate judges. You may have a motion to suppress hearing in front of the associate judge, and the associate judge may rule. Let's say the associate judge grants a motion to suppress or denies a motion to suppress. Whichever party loses that motion has the right to appeal that de novo to the sitting district court judge. So I don't know, they may be calling them associate judges, but I'm not sure if they're going to be real statutory legal associate judges or whether they are just appointed visiting judges to whom these matters are going to be assigned. If it's the latter,
I believe it's the latter.
Yeah.
Well, when it was discussed earlier, someone called them associate judges and they were reprimanded. So they apparently, and maybe that was actually a legal reason, not just an ego reason. But I have heard there's also going to be Judge Bradley and Judge one other great one will be Mark Brown.
there's
and it's also be for in custody. I believe what I heard was this is only for people who are in custody. They're not handling bond cases. Is that not right?
No, it was followed up that it will be bond cases as well.
Ah, okay.
I think the biggest issue I'm seeing with this is the backlog for my cases, and some prosecutors are great, but a lot of prosecutors are not looking at my cases. They're not getting evidence, and they're not responding to my emails.
Right.
And depending on how the prosecutor's office handles this, if they send a set of prosecutors over to these courts to handle these cases that are getting transferred, well, then they don't know about the case. Then they're going to say, well, I need time to get up on the case. And then with all I feel like it's just 3 more courts that nobody's going to do any work on. And
they're going to
have a time delay.
You're exactly right.
Prosecutors in this court?
They haven't decided. everybody found out about it today, including the DA's office. So they haven't had a chance to even decide how they're going to handle staffing these new courts and how that's going to be handled.
Yeah, I would not want to be one of those prosecutors if they permanently staff that, because it's just going to be, Judge, I don't know where the discovery is. It's not my case. I've had it for all of, 30 minutes.
I can't wait to see if the judges will stand on their discovery order. When push comes to shove, what judges stand on discovery orders, what judges stand on their rulings as far as getting evidence over and whether or not that's usable in a trial.
I think more judges need to be like Court 6 with Judge Andrews. She has a discovery setting, and if the discovery is not turned over by that point, it's suppressed for the state. Now, if they get it later, they still have to turn it over to the defense, and if the defense wants to use it, they can. Otherwise, it's done. And it's a policy in her court, and it makes it real simple, and they have a deadline, and that's it.
I think it's but see, it's easier said than done. I think you're right. I know, but it's a different case when it's a sex case or a murder case. Or do you think that the judges will have the backbone to say, "Well, fine. Well, this confession doesn't come in because you didn't, proffer it."
In the confession context, there's a statute that requires it. But anyways,
That's true. That's right.
But I see your other point. If there's a more serious case with other evidence, maybe you just need longer discovery. Of course they need longer to make things happen than in like a misdemeanor DWI. But ultimately, they need to stand behind it. And I do think there's some district court judges on the bench right now that would stand behind it.
I've seen it.
I'm afraid it's going to invite a lot of interlocutory appeals.
I don't think you can interlocutory appeal those kind of things, can you?
Not 38-20, not 38-22, but you can.
Anytime a trial judge excludes evidence or does anything that dismisses a case, the state can appeal.
Unless jeopardy's attached.
Unless jeopardy's attached. Yeah, pre-trial. They do a pre-trial. The state can appeal.
What about?
Yeah, just go practice in Fort Bend. It happened all the time.
But hey,
under previous regimes.
The television doesn't get much work because nothing's being tried. So
that's why I'm afraid they're going to do this. That's exactly why they're going to do this. And
if they're going to start doing that, then what's going to start happening is what happens in some counties where lawyers are just going to say, fine, we're just going to wait and have our motion suppress hearing after the jury's in the box.
Right.
Well,
it'll take a little while for that to happen, but these three courts are just going to spin the wheels and go nowhere.
Troy, let me ask you, on a case like that, say a district court judge has a very I don't want to say defined, flexible discovery deadline, and they have given the state a chance to turn over X, Y, and Z evidence and said, by this date, you must have it. They show up, no good cause given for not having it, and they say, okay, I'm excluding this evidence. And then they take it up on appeal. How does the appellate court look at that ruling? Like, what's the standard there?
I think that's going to depend on the circumstances and the findings that the judge makes. There is case law that supports the idea that the least severe sanctions should be imposed, i.e., you should consider a continuance before you exclude evidence, or before you ultimately. I'm not sure they could even dismiss a case, but I wouldn't want to be in a position, which is why I don't generally ask to exclude evidence before trial, unless I have an agreement with the state. If I'm going to do a pretrial motion to suppress, there's going to be an agreement that if we win, the case goes away.
Right. In writing.
Right.
And it's final and over then. Otherwise, I might as well just wait till the jury's in the box.
Do we know it? Go for it. Go for it, Justin.
All I said was, yep, what Troy said.
Do we know, and I missed the board meeting today, do we know anything regarding NRG? I know trials are going on. I know I have, Todd DuPont was up to this week. That case worked out. Judge Robert Johnson had tried a case last week. Trials are still going on as far as I know. I had 3 trials set this month, and all 3 of them got pushed very, very, very easily, which was a surprise to me because we were announcing ready. Do we know if NRG's contract has been extended and whether or not we're going to be having jury trials in the next foreseeable months?
I don't know if NRG's contract is being extended, but I seem to recall hearing that the rodeo has been pushed back
I heard that.
Yes.
But I don't
He's
remember.
pushed to May.
Okay, that's not all that much further. I don't know what the status is of the contract. I mean, think about this. There have been, I'm guessing, just pure pulling number, I'd bet there's been probably not been 20, 30 trials, civil and criminal combined during this, and the county spent what, $15 million or something, some astronomical number to get our.
We love to throw astronomical numbers around. We've thrown bigger numbers about this out on this show before. We don't know.
It was a large, many millions of dollars to be able to pick a jury just for those 30 cases, where that money could have been spent much more wisely, in my view, on indigent defense.
Yes.
A number of things.
Yes.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. 100%.
For people who need food. So jury trials. I lost my train of thought, but yes, I mean, I'm with you completely on that.
Well, you were asking if people have had any, if they're still going forward. And I've heard, you mentioned Judge Johnson. I've heard of 2 other judges in the district courts who are apparently, not personally, this was mentioned in the meeting today that you referenced, that they're still going forward with trials. They said so this week. I know of at least one misdemeanor court judge that is doing that. But otherwise, I've seen all the judges honor what are we up to, the 30th order from the Supreme Court and Office of Court Administration today. They're honoring that. What, 33rd?
33rd.
Wow. So they're respecting the system that they work within and saying that they're not going to have trials when things are shut down.
The ear to the ground.
Well, the order, though, just to be clear, the Supreme Court order does allow for jury trials.
Sure.
The no in person, it does allow for jury trials if you have the proper certification. Now, there's the big question that it's not showing that Harris County's been certified, but yet they're still holding trials.
Right.
And I'm hearing from the judges that they are certified to have trials. So I think even the judges are a little confused.
Juan Aguirre says new Supreme Court order signed today says no in-persons through April 1st. But of course, the admin law judge can apply for certification to have trials. But I echo what Kate says, that I hear that Harris County isn't certified, but that they're still having trials.
Well, the Fort Bend County Courthouse a week or so ago, or was the last, the week of January 6th, that week was shut down because they didn't have any plan in place.
Wow.
Their local administrative judge had not submitted the new plan, and so they had no plan. And other than a few very essential proceedings, nothing was happening in those courts.
As a matter of course,
the reason, I was just going to say, the reason that Harris County didn't shut down that first week following that 30th order was Susan Brown asked the Supreme Court to allow Harris County to have until January 11th to come up with a plan and keep the same procedures in place during that time, because of the number of defendants that would be coming into court following that holiday weekend. She said it would be impossible to notify everybody and make that work. And they approved that January 11th delay. So that was approved by the Supreme Court through, I believe, Susan Brown.
As a matter of course, should we be objecting to every one of these trials or not? It's just case by case basis, right? But let's say we're going to trial. We're not, we're not pushing to go to trial.
There are some defendants and some lawyers who want to go to trial. And God bless them, let them have their trials if that's what they want. There are others who have legitimate health concerns. Myself. There are others who are concerned that the process is not fundamentally fair because of the way that everybody is masked, the jurors in particular. And I don't think it's fair or right for any judge to just blanketly say, well, our procedures are good. They've been approved, therefore they're good enough. Mm-hmm. Good enough ought not be the standard. The standard ought to be, does it still remain fundamentally fair and effective as a way to try a criminal case? Civil case is a different story.
Should we object it? Should we just be objecting to them? Even like for example, me. Let's say like hypothetically, it's me. I'm not at risk. I'm fine, and then my client is fine. And he's not. Should we just put that object? Are these cases coming back? Because a lot of people think they're all.
If they have properly followed the rules, the cases are not coming back unless you have things happen during trial that create problems because of the way it's being handled. I don't think we want to get a reversal just based on a generic, I don't want to do it objection.
That's what I think. You know, there's a rumor that the civil courts are really driving most of this and the criminal courts are kind of following. Although I don't necessarily know how true or not true, nor am I sponsoring that. But they're saying the ear to the ground is saying the civil courts are really pushing it. And currently the civil courts, from what I understand, because NRG is winding up, they're really pushing towards they're testing out voir dire in Zoom as well. Will that ever fly with us in criminal law?
No, in fact,
no.
Supreme Court orders have very clearly said there's a clause in the Supreme Court orders that was jointly negotiated and agreed to both by TDCAA and TCDLA as part of a joint committee that was put together that provides that there can be no remote jury trials in criminal cases without both sides, both lawyers and the defendant agreeing to it.
Yeah.
And that's because the Constitution requires in-person confrontation, absent some exceptional circumstances which aren't going to apply in the vast majority of cases.
Right.
But I mean, personal confrontation, you know, wasn't the recent Supreme Court case, and we have 1 minute, that came down. It was a limited holding regarding confrontation and witnesses on Zoom. We're saying that maybe the voir dire selection process is more delicate or more important than that, and offers more or different protections.
Zoom clearly provides protection, but I don't think it provides the same information, the same knowledge, the same viewpoint that you would get with a jury in a courtroom, much less a situation where you get to see the witnesses. I've done a couple of Zoom ALR hearings and I hate it. I like to be able to see my witness and see their gestures, see their body language, which you can't do on Zoom. I think we're about done.
Right.
Troy McKinney and his tails, ladies and gentlemen. Troy McKinney and the tails. The man can. If you've never seen anybody get crossed by Troy McKinney, it's a lot.
You haven't lived.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, they get snipped to bits. With that being said, Kate Farrell, thank you. Hi, how you doing, Kate? Awesome, thank you. Justin Harris, thank you so much.
Sure, it's cold in the garage.
Hey,
mine's
Troy
not as nice
McKinney.
as Troy's.
Troy McKinney, the Godfather himself, the ex-president, past president, and the man, the myth, the legend. Troy, thank you, brother.
You bet. Y'all take care.
Thanks,
Mark,
Troy.
the Houston Media Source, and everybody out there in Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association, thanks you so much. Next week, hasta luego, amigo.
Wow.
Calling